Cool, recording.
Okay, sweet. All right, thanks everyone for connecting. The dedicated crew that keep coming back for these sessions. It's really nice though. I've really enjoyed the talks that have led up to this one so far, and it's really neat that we're keeping it going, even though we have, well, some of us have more freedom now than we had before. We can get back to our regular lives. So even keeping this going, I think is just really nice to stay connected with people that I know I wouldn't normally get a chance to chat with, folks living in other cities and that sort of thing. I wouldn't see you till at least the first mix tournament, because otherwise we'll retreat to our sort of local activities. This has been nice. So the topic that I'm talking about today is developing leadership in players. And it's meant to be sort of a rebroadcast or a redo of a really good session that was delivered as part of that Disc Northwest series that Mara had pointed out as a good sort of resource to look into. And so I watched that talk, and for those of you who maybe went and watched that talk in advance as well, I've tried to make this one a little bit different so that you don't get an exact same copy of it. But if you haven't watched that talk, which is fine, because you didn't want to ruin the surprise for yourself, then I still managed to work in some of the key points that were covered in it. And also because I wanted to keep this kind of interactive, and I think that there's a lot that we can learn from each other, and I really liked Mara's technique of using the breakout rooms in the last session. I'm going to throw you guys into rooms to talk amongst each other and share some ideas, because I think in this topic specifically, that's where a lot of good learnings can come from, because there isn't sort of one golden rule per se that will work excellent and fabulous the whole time with every single player in every single situation. So I think there's lots that we can learn from each other about, you know, different things that we do in our different clubs and teams and regions. So I'll start off with some slides, because I'm not as brave as Mara and Eva were to just chat freestyle it. Yeah, so developing leadership in players. All right, so look at all these smiling faces. Is my video covering the picture? Is that better? You can see all the smiling faces. So this was taken a couple of years ago at a U24 camp that was held in Auckland, and I just wanted to put it up because, you know, this is a really nice sort of glimpse of our community, and I kind of wanted to say that everyone in this photo either has already taken on a leadership role or certainly could if they aren't doing it already. Everyone except maybe the little puppy dog that's in that front row there. You can search for him. But you know, looking at that, it doesn't matter necessarily where you're from or what your background is, or necessarily how long you've been playing. There's opportunities to take on leadership because it can happen in a lot of different ways. So things that I'd like to cover in this chat is why it's important to develop leadership in ourselves and our teammates, and then share some of the different ways that people can lead on a team, and then what are some of the different opportunities for us to get people feeling more comfortable about stepping into these roles, because I think that's one thing that prevents a lot of people from taking that step, is it is sort of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and that does take sort of some confidence and some willingness to go there. And if it's different, sometimes that can prevent us from wanting to be challenged in that way. So the next slide was this one. I was going to try another little element of being interactive and get you to do a little poll, because I just wanted to do a little quiz and get a sense of what people's experience with leadership has been like so far. So I'm going to stop this share because I'm going to get you to go to a website called Slido, and I'll give you the address. You'll see it on this screen, slido.com. And when you go to that website, if you have your phones, type in the code 95338. And the question that I want you to answer is, have you ever led anything for your team? So that could be either in the top leadership position of actually leading the squad, to maybe just leading a single training, to maybe a warm-up, to a fitness pod, you know, a small element of something. But have you been in some sort of leadership position? I just want to get a sense of what people's experience levels are here. Sweet. And you guys are seeing the results kind of pop up. So for everyone has had some sort of dabble in a leadership role. Cool. All right, I think that is most everyone, because we only had 10 participants, and so I would be one of them. Okay, so the next one I wanted to ask is, in that leadership role, and I don't know, you might have to refresh and go back to the same, to Slido to enter it again to do the next poll, but I want to know, for that role, did you volunteer because you wanted to, or did you do it because no one else did, or did you get voluntold to do it? I think we just need one more. Well, it's nice to see no one was voluntold, but that can often be a common way of getting into things. Okay. So generally, though, it looks like people have had, I would say, a positive experience in that they willingly volunteered to take on that role, which is really great. But you can see that, you know, another common way that we get into these leadership positions is because the call is put out and nobody else steps up to it, and so you feel compelled to either chip in and keep things going, which is great, but to sort of fill that role when maybe you didn't necessarily plan on doing that, and maybe you weren't necessarily prepared to do that. So, whoops, sorry. Whoops, I don't want you to see that yet. Sorry, just trying to find my windows. Okay, can you see my slides again now? Thumbs up, cool. All right, thank you for that pop quiz. That was just interesting to sort of see what people's experiences was. So we'll just go through some of the reasons why we want to develop leadership in players. And I think this is probably pretty obvious, but it's still worth going through some of the key points that I thought, because it's good reminders and it's just good points of discussion to keep in mind and reinforce why we want to do this. So one thing, or one part of it, would be sustainability. Oops, there's a bit of a delay. But sustainability of your club in terms of having that carryover from year to year, having a team in place for next year, someone to lead it. Oh no, they all showed up. Okay, here's all of them. Sustainability. Some teams might be lucky enough to have a leader that is there year after year, keeps returning. You've got that consistency, and they keep the program going. That's awesome, that's great, and if you have that person, hold on to them. But in a lot of cases, life happens, and life can be people in your leadership moving away, having other priorities come up, whether that's work or job, or we play women's, so often that can be starting a family. And then, you know, maybe even just people who have been in a leadership position for a long time may eventually get burnt out or want to go back to being just a player, which is fair, and that's totally understandable. So one thing that we want to do by bringing in new players is you can also bring in fresh perspectives, which is good for keeping your team sustainable in that way too, of either new techniques or new strategies, or new ways of doing things. So the second sort of key point about why you'd want to develop leadership is growth. And for that, I was mostly talking about individual personal growth. When you get into these roles, you can find that you'll gain more confidence, whether that's in life skills like speaking in front of groups, or game skills, because you'll have to learn more about the game, or even just how to explain certain concepts of the game. And you definitely learn something when you have to explain it to someone else. You can also discover what you like and don't like about leadership or being in a leadership position. And it's okay not to like it. Some things maybe you can grow into, but some things maybe you really, it's not your jam, and that's fine. But you wouldn't know that unless you try it. And then you can quickly find out what you're good at and what you're not good at. Again, whether that's speaking in front of groups or explaining things clearly, or dealing with the emotional side of players coming to you with issues and problems to solve. Some people are good at that, some are not. Strategy, some people love that stuff and others don't. So when you identify your weaknesses, you can then figure out if you want to work on them, or you could say, okay, good to know, that is a weakness of mine. I'm going to focus on my strengths, but if I'm in a position where I need to deliver something that I'm weak at, I'll look for help with that and either bring in someone else to fulfill that gap, or then I'll really have to focus on it if I really still want to do that. The next one is inspiration. So we've often heard this, the term used, you can't be what you can't see, when we just talk about even women in leadership positions, and getting women more screen time and more high profile playing opportunities and things like that. But this is definitely in terms of leadership as well. And it's beyond even just gender. We can now get into sort of considerations around race and ethnicity, and even seeing someone of a similar personality style being in a leadership position. Introverts can be leaders too, because there's different roles and things that they can do. You don't have to be the boisterous, outgoing, super friendly, confident, loud speaking type of person, type A personality. That can work in some situations, but a coach doesn't have to be that, and a person in leadership doesn't have to be that sort of specific mold of a personality. Understanding, for that one, I was thinking more about just, I guess, a greater appreciation and understanding of the role. You definitely, once you've had a chance to try it out, you understand that it's hard. It can be difficult to balance being a leader and being a player on the same team. It can be difficult managing all of the little elements that go along with it. And so I think once you've done that and you've gotten a sense and sort of looked behind the curtain and seen what goes on, you get a greater appreciation for it. And I would say it builds more understanding and tolerance and empathy for people then who you'll work with who are in those leadership positions. Being maybe a little forgiving if the drill that they're running doesn't go quite to plan, or they've made a mistake in a certain decision. If you've been there yourself, I think you might have a little more, again, empathy for them, or patience as well. Camaraderie. So I think this is when you're leading with maybe another person or small group. We all have strong bonds with our teammates, but I think when you are leading with someone, there's sort of some extra strength there. You're going to go through some very specific and special situations. You can rant to each other, and you can celebrate with each other. So I think it's a really nice relationship to be able to have with someone. On the other hand, it can maybe be very difficult if you end up being paired with someone or in a group that maybe brings out things that you think differently about. So the camaraderie is like sort of the positive side of it, but I would just say that if you do want to lead in certain groups, that make sure you are on the same page for things, or at least discuss things in advance, so that you don't have any fights in front of the players and things like that. You can do that behind the scenes. And the last one is ownership. And I think this is really important, because when you get involved in a role, and whether that's sort of top high-level leadership or leading in another smaller way, it's just getting you more personally involved with the team, which gives you more ownership over the team, and I think loyalty and feeling of belonging and being part of it. And I think that's really important. And so all of those are sort of the reasons why we want to build leaders. So the first breakout room that I want to do is, I gathered this list of all positive and professional attributes. And so I wanted you to look at this list and pick sort of the top 3 words that you would associate with leadership. And I know there's a lot there, so I'll give you a minute or 2 to read through them before I bump you into your breakout rooms. And once you have these top 3 words in your head, I want you to then think about your respective teams that you're playing on, and how many people on your teams have those qualities. So, and I'm thinking of more like quantity, how many people, not necessarily which people have those qualities, but just a rough number of people. And maybe try not to think about specific personalities or that sort of thing. Again, we're just thinking, if I was to pick the word motivated, how many people on the team would you say are motivated? And try to think of people, or think of this in a way that you're assigning this category to them. They might not think that they are a very motivating type person, but you think they are. So think of it like that. So now that everyone has a chance to look at these words, do you think you have your 3 picked out, or do you want another minute?
Jana, can we have a look at the far right side of the table?
Oh.
Oops. Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm not sure why.
If you hover over the top video, you might see a couple of lines to minimize the sort of video thread. I don't know.
Oops.
Oh yeah, well that works. I think
okay.
we can see it now, can't we? It's
sure.
Sensible is the furthest right, is it?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, does everyone have their 3 words? Maybe some people need a little bit more time. All right, thumbs up if you've got your words. Sweet. And Chi-Chi, is it Chi-Chi? Do you have your words? Okay. Okay, awesome. So and there's Sam's got his words. Okay, cool. I'll assume Kamusa does. So I'm going to break you guys into breakout groups. And again, your instructions are then to share what your 3 words were. And I think I'd like you to sort of say why you picked those 3 words. And then compare your words with the other people in your group. See if you had any matchups, any duplicates. See if you picked the same words and if you had the same reasons for picking them. And then in general, just sort of speak to whether or not you feel that your team has a lot of people with those skills, or maybe a lot of people with one of those attributes, but maybe less of another. And just sort of have a conversation about, what you're seeing as the makeup of attributes within your teams. So we've got 12 people. I'm going to make 4 breakout rooms. Oh no, 3 breakout rooms with 3 to 4 people in each. Okay, I'll leave you in there for 5 minutes and I'll start the timer now. Bye.
Hello.
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 I'm exciting. This is my first ever breakout room.
Welcome.
Did anyone want to share their words first?
I'll let you go. You hardly speak sometimes.
Excuse me? No.
Hi, all right. Cool. Priscilla, if you go, and then Amelia, you can type yours in.
Yeah. I had passionate, I think balanced and organized.
Cool. Do you want to give any background to why you chose those ones? Or should we all just say ours and then talk through that part?
I think we should say ours.
Cool. So I had adaptable, helpful, and hardworking. No overlap yet. Hey,
I
adaptable.
I also had adaptable, passionate, so 2 overlapping, and also humble as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And if you guys have your chat open, you can see Amelia had adaptable, organized, and realistic, with an honorable mention to patient. I think I wanted to give half of the words an honorable mention. It was pretty tricky to choose 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, we had adaptable, organized, and passionate, I think, were the 3 that we had overlaps with.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive, really. I was not many. There were so many words to choose from. Anyone want to share about why they chose their words, or even just one of them?
I think passionate is definitely a really big one, because it's hard to be good at something without being genuine, and I think to have a reason behind why you want to be a leader, or like why you want to, I guess, play frisbee, is a good start to becoming a leader, because that's the platform to sharing the knowledge and sharing what you know. And I think that in itself is leadership, from beyond just like the status and anything else. And I know like some of my teammates, like they're really good at just cheering people on and explaining things on the sideline. I think that's a really strong example of leadership. Not a female, but like Nick Whitlock, he's really, really passionate. He really hypes people up, and he knows his stuff, and he's always willing to share that kind of information, not just as a captain, but also just as a friend and teammate. So yeah, that's one reason why.
Yeah, for sure. I think I missed it. I did consider authentic, which I think is what you were sort of alluding to there a bit as well, about when you're passionate, you become authentic. And I know frisbee is the one thing in my life that I've ever said really that I'm passionate about. And I think, yeah, I don't know which word I would take out, but I would now that you're talking about it and I'm thinking about it, I think a lot of it falls into place if you're passionate. So hardworking, you don't feel hardworking when you're passionate. So I can probably I could take that one out, because the passion drives you, so you don't feel like you're working hard, because if you enjoy what you do, you don't work a day in your life or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Anyone else want to talk about anything? Here we go. You guys read. I don't know if it'll show up in the video recording, so I'll read it out loud for the recording purposes. So Amelia said realistic and patient are both kind of related to the recent schools coaching she's done, coming from uni teams, and it's important for her to remember that the kids will have a lot going on in their lives, and that they come to training to hang out with their friends as well as to play. So it's okay if they don't get things right straight away. Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really hard thing to learn. For some people, I definitely struggle with it. And then there are some people who I think have that, naturally. And it's unfortunate, because I feel like a lot of people that have that in my teams would be the ones who would think that they're not cut out for coaching, or, they're not good enough for coaching or whatever. They're not good enough players. But I sort of want to shake them and be like, but you have this thing that I have had to work so hard to get to where I'm at, and you're naturally so much better than me at it. So, yeah, that's a really good point. Is there anything else anyone wants to say, or should we try and quickly cover how many people in our team we think have these attributes? Which is pulling a number out of thin air.
The word didn't show up, but I am a huge advocate for commitment.
Yeah.
60 seconds.
Real
Yeah,
quick.
it's pretty self-explanatory, but
yeah. Cool. All right. See you on the other side.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Welcome back, most of you. I hope that whoever was in Mara's room, she gave you the disclaimer that she recorded everything you said. The recording defaults to her room. So, I think we're just waiting for the last room to come back.
We shouldn't have rushed back. We didn't even answer the question about how many people in our team have the attributes. We were too busy talking about the words.
5 minutes goes by really quickly.
So far.
Us too, don't worry.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Okay, everyone's back now. So again, you know the deal. When you break out into smaller groups, we come back as a big group, and then I'm hoping that each of you will nominate someone or volunteer tell them to report back on what were some of the similarities or differences in your group about the words. And then any sort of information maybe that you might want to share about whether or not you think that your team has people with those attributes, or if there were certain attributes that you think your team could use more of. Would anyone like to go first?
I can do it for our group.
Cool.
So words that came up from everyone were like engaging, passionate, organized, empathetic, decisive, motivated, receptive, balanced, patient, listens well. And I think we all thought being decisive was really important. Like that's one that stood out to us, that we're like, yeah, that's really good to have in a leader. And Emily was sharing that that was one of the qualities in her team. Her coaches and the team that she was just playing for did really well. That came up with goals straight away and that kind of stuff from the start, and was real decisive about it. Also, another thing she brought up was that it was good being patient and being able to like explain things different ways, and I think that's similar to like being empathetic and stuff as well.
Cool. Awesome. And someone else from another group?
I can talk for our group, and then maybe Janelle can jump in and finish the sentence that she was cut halfway through on. So our group said decisive as well. There wasn't one that I picked up on, but after hearing Janelle and Sam chat about it, it became clear that was really important as well. I agree. The biggest thing that came through in our discussion, I think, was sort of motivated and committed. Oh, sorry, no, there were two things: motivated and committed, and sort of leading by example, and also listening well, which was Sam's top one, and being broad-minded and thoughtful. So sort of being willing to take on feedback from your team.
Cool. Great. All right, next group.
All right, I can talk to some of it. I didn't write down everyone's, but the three that we had overlaps with were adaptable, passionate, and organized. And we talked a little bit about passionate and how it's really important to be passionate, and also I had the realization that when you're passionate, a lot of some of the other stuff can fall into place. So I didn't have passionate, but now would replace hardworking with passionate, because I know that it doesn't really feel like I'm working that hard because I'm so passionate about it. And so that can be a really, a really easy way to kind of tick off a lot of those other things, is when you're really passionate about it, some of it falls into place. And then another one, which I think will be really important, I think we've got some schools coaches, so being patient and realistic, which I think were both words, and they kind of tie in together, where especially if you're coaching like high school, then you got a lot of people who are coming from not knowing what they're doing at all, and so you have to be realistic about how quickly people can learn how to do things, or realistic about why your team is there. If you're not coaching the top competitive club teams, then you're not necessarily coaching people that are there 100% to get better and be really good at Frisbee. Maybe it's just a social experience, and that's okay too. So being realistic about what they are there for and what they can achieve, and then patient with them is really important.
Cool. And I think, yeah, so that we had 3 rooms, so that was everyone. So that was really good. I hope that that was sort of a useful exercise for you guys, even to see that, you know, it can be quite a variety of attributes that can make someone a good leader. And that I think if you can see, we often don't see many of those attributes in ourselves necessarily, or maybe there's some that others would see in us that we wouldn't think that we had right away. But it can come out in either the ways that we play on the field or the ways that we interact with people. And those can also be opportunities for people to reconsider being, you know, the option of being a leader, because if they have this preconception about what a leader should act like and how they should, you know, what qualities they think they should have. But really, if you are just a really organized person who's passionate about Ultimate, those are 2 really key qualities that could be really useful to have in a team and still be very applicable in being in a leadership position. So this ties in nicely to my next slides, which hopefully this displays a bit better for you. I'll still make them full screen. But yeah, so just some things to remember about that, about sort of what leadership entails and what kind of people can step into these leadership positions. So leadership can take many forms. This can be decision-making, like was brought up in one of the groups. It can be the strategy person, strategizing your tactics and your approaches to situations and games and how you play. It can be leading by example, so your efforts on the field, giving 100%, you know, even if things are down, or if you're down in a game, playing like you're winning, or playing like you only have 1 more point to score to break the tie. So, you know, not giving up, that sort of thing. Personally, I find I lead better through effort on the field than unnecessarily decision-making or strategizing. I know in the last talk, Mara said, if anyone wants to talk strategy, come talk to me because I love that stuff. If anyone has played on a team with me, I've probably given the disclaimer at the beginning that don't come up to me and ask me about strategy, because I know strategies, but I do better if you say, we're going to do this, let's go out and do it, and I'll work my ass off on the field to do it. But if we want to talk about different ways of approaching it, go talk to Jenny Parker about that. She'll talk about strategy for days with you, whereas I would rather just run my hardest and try to do that strategy as best as I can. So that's how I feel better about leading. In terms of strengths and weaknesses, I would say a weakness of mine is having that bigger picture and sort of strategy mindset. So I rely on the fact that if I just work my butt off, that I'm trying to show my efforts there in that sort of leadership role. Other roles that people can have, positivity powers. They can be that person that maintains resiliency and maintains a positive attitude and gets others motivated, and keeping spirits high throughout a game, no matter what the situation. That is a really valuable skill, and it can be really difficult. And some people are really natural at it, and maybe don't consider that a way to be a leader, but I would say it definitely is, because when we're down in the dumps, we're going to look to someone like that as probably one of the strongest people on the team, because they're going to bring us out of it. So, and then again, we mentioned organization skills. That's really key, I think, for a leadership position, and a really good way to sort of get into leadership positions. A lot of behind, like if you're keen to take care of stuff behind the scenes, that's still important in running a team. And again, if you're doing all that stuff and keeping everything working, then you can let someone who's really good at strategizing and motivating, let them have the front and center positions, whereas you're keeping everything ticking along in the background. So again, leadership can take many, many forms. So as we said too, and in that exercise of just going through all the attributes, I mean, you listed off so many different ones. rarely will one person have all of those attributes. And one person can rarely do all of those different jobs that I just listed. So, you know, there's a few unicorns out there who maybe have the perfect combination of all of those attributes, and they can get all the little jobs done, and they get along with everyone, and everyone responds to their leadership style. But those are rare creatures, and if you've got one, hold on to them, because they might just go poof into the ether. So I think we really do need to recognize that we need to lean on others and ask for help, because we can't fulfill all of those objectives and sort of tick off all of those boxes. It's really hard to hold yourself up to that standard, to think that you can do that. So that's why leadership teams can work really well. When you pair up with someone, particularly someone who could maybe is stronger in the areas that you're weaker in, then you wouldn't feel so maybe hesitant to step into a leadership role if you know that you can buddy up with someone who can make up for any skills that you're lacking in. So strength in numbers. I always say, if you're thinking about trying something out, bring 2 friends with you and you can all do it together. Groups of 2 or 3 work really well. Groups larger than that, if 5 of you or 6 of you wanted to come together and be leaders, that's great as well. But I think you might have to get a bit more particular about who's going to be in charge of what, and maybe even who will speak on certain things. Maybe this group is in charge of D and this group is in charge of O, and this other pair is going to be overall strategies, perhaps. I think the Wellington Club has a fairly large leadership group, but you'd have to speak more about that, I'm not sure. But sometimes it feels like that you've got maybe 5 or 6 different people in various leadership roles, but I'm guessing that maybe, again, that they're pretty clearly lined out and people have certain lanes that they're sticking to and things that they're doing. And so the last one is that even these special unicorns that have all the boxes checked and are just amazing, everyone makes mistakes. And leadership is really a learning process. And I think one of the things that we have to be comfortable with is the potential that we might fail, and that we are going to make mistakes along the way. And I think that, again, if players have empathy for that, and if you are comfortable with that, of being ready to fail, then it will be a bit easier to swallow. I mean, it sucks. Nobody likes making mistakes, but it's like a drop in a game. It's going to happen at some point. So if you can just get ready for when it happens and then deal with it and move on, sort of the same thing with being in a leadership position. So now this is where we get into sort of some of the really nice tips that were shared in the DISC Northwest presentation. Is the presenter there, Kellen Gibney, gave some nice tips about how to develop leaders. And it can be through sort of the tactics that you're interacting with players, and then some of the things that you can get them to do to get them more involved in the team. So she divided sort of the leaders into these tactics into 2 buckets. And one is developing inquisitive leaders. So getting people more comfortable about asking questions, being willing to participate and to get involved in whether it's discussions or different parts of training and different parts of the squad. So one of the ways to develop inquisitive leaders is so after you've explained something or you've run through a drill, just phrasing it in terms of, what questions do you have about this? So letting players know that you expect them to have questions and it's okay to speak up and to participate and ask. So this is sort of asking that instead of, are there any questions about this? Just put it out there that I know that you will have questions, so let's hear them, bring them on, let's talk about stuff. I think, and I don't want to generalize, but I find that sometimes women's teams can be the quietest teams. Nobody wants to speak up, nobody wants to ask questions. I don't know if that's because nobody wants to feel dumb, or just the fear of public speaking, or they don't feel comfortable, which is odd because your team is supposed to be your safe space. You've got people, you've got your friends there, you've got your teammates there who should be willing to back you up. So I would think it's a great place to sort of be comfortable in speaking up. But sometimes, even if people don't understand they still won't ask a question. So really encouraging that discussion is a good way to get people comfortable doing that. When they do ask a question, acknowledge that that's great, good question. I'm glad you asked that. Because doing that sort of establishes that having questions and getting involved, and even if it's not a question about what does this mean, it can be, why are we doing that? So have them feel open to asking for reasonings behind doing things. It's a positive thing to do. And then again, demonstrating the importance of asking questions, so that you as a coach also need to ask questions. Ask your other coaches or your other leadership people if you've missed anything after you've explained something, because then it shows other players that even you are, are open to receiving information and asking questions from other players. Ask the players themselves how they felt things went in a drill or a game or scenario. Again, it's just sort of building those opportunities to have conversations and to make them feel like they have the ability to speak up and share their thoughts about either how the drill felt or how it went, or what they might change to make it more in a game-like situation or to challenge them more. And so the next sort of kind of type of leaders is directive leaders. And so these are the people that these are the types of leaders that are doing things and actually having more of a physical and direct participation in your trainings. So you may already have people who are doing this. So whether it's yourselves as the leaders of your teams, or maybe you've got people in sort of vice captaincy or vice leadership roles, or people that you've got your eye on that you're grooming to become leaders because they're already demonstrating some of the attributes in other ways on the field, and you can sort of see a future for them for being a leader, and you're trying to, carry them along. They've already got good potential in this role, and you want to sort of move them along the path. So ways to do that is to create new or more responsibilities for them. So I already named a couple of options for doing that. For example, if you want to create a vice captain role, so they can sort of shadow you and or your other leadership. It's kind of a nice way to take a step into that other side of the team, but in a safe way. They can just see how it's done, see what you guys do, see what goes into planning and leading a team. You can give them other tasks, such as leading warm-up, whether that's something that you script out for them and say, take everyone through these motions, or you can say, we need a warm-up. It's got to involve stretches. It's got to involve footwork. It's got to involve this. Go do some research and figure and draft one up for us, and it will be our team warm-up. Another opportunity is you can get them to explain or lead a drill. Again, I think these are really good opportunities to prep them to sort of see what goes into planning a drill and explaining a concept. So if you say, I want you to take them through the triangulation marking drill, and I want you to focus on these 3 key points, so that they know they have to distill their explanation into 3 key takeaways. You're doing it right when, and different ways of how to explain and talk about things. They'll learn then how to deliver these concepts, and to be able to once you take that formula of explaining a drill or a concept, they could apply that to other things. It just takes some practice. And then one thing that I noticed too from Eva's talk is she had mentioned that they were getting some of their intermediate or maybe some of their experienced players in those coaching roles working with beginner players at training. So that's another great opportunity as well, is that it gives your intermediate or some of the other people that you're grooming into coaches a chance to be in a leadership position compared to a beginner. Intermediates might feel like they don't have anything to offer because they still feel really new to the game, but compared to someone who's only been playing a year or two, they can still give some good tips. They can still be able to help them with basic throwing and that sort of thing. Just realized that I haven't. Oh yeah. So that's sort of the new and more responsibilities, and just some examples of what could be done there. Another way that you can develop existing leaders is to give them feedback. And when I say this, I assume that they want feedback. And you should have that conversation with them, especially if you're grooming someone to be a leader. You should have a conversation with them and say, hey, if I see ways that you can improve things, do you want me to give that advice to you? It's always good to ask someone if they would like feedback before you give them feedback. That's just a general rule of thumb. But yeah, if you can, and if they're open to this and they want to learn more about leadership, check in with them, talk about what's working well, what isn't, things that they'd like to change. For example, when you give them these new and different responsibilities to get involved in the team, what are they liking? What are they finding difficult? You can have quick chats with them after a training where they've done something and sort of debrief. How did it go? How did you feel about that? Would you like to do that again? If so, is there anything that you want to change?
Can I ask a question, Jana?
Yeah, definitely.
How do you deal with it if there's someone who wants more of a role in leadership and is actually looking for that, but is unwilling to take any feedback?
Like they have a set plan of how they want to lead and they don't want to change their style or try new ideas or listen to what you're wanting them to do?
Yeah. And even if it's not feedback from like other people in leadership, but feedback generally from anyone, they're just someone who's not open to feedback.
Yeah, it's funny, when I was thinking of topics to do for this talk, I know that having difficult conversations with people could be a really helpful topic. I'm not great at it. I think that that there might be other people that would be good to give a whole session on that, and I would love to attend that session. But I think that the main thing that has to be done is just you have to be willing to have a conversation, and be clear with them. And I think that if you're already in a leadership position and they're wanting to join you in that leadership position, you, as being the one already in charge, you have a right to sort of say, okay, well, this is how we do things here on this team. If you want to be part of our leadership position or part of our leadership group, we're open to feedback. We want to be able to talk freely about these things, back and forth, and sort of set guidelines. And I guess, like you say, with your team culture, really outline, I guess, what people should be comfortable and able to do within that. But when someone it's their way or the highway and they don't want to listen to critique or feedback, that's really difficult, because you can try and be as open and initiative with conversation, but if they don't want to hear it and they're putting up walls, I don't know, I would say that person isn't going to be the best leader, actually. And then maybe that's a tough conversation that you need to have about their role within your team.
Thanks.
I don't know if
That's
that
actually really helpful. Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Does anyone else have a tip there, maybe? But yeah, that's a difficult one. And I think conversations like that can happen when either, I kind of made a joke about it that, oh, if you and your other leader really disagree on something, try to figure it out together off field rather than argue in front of your players. But that can be a real challenge. If you and your other co-captain don't agree on something, you got to find a way to work that out. And whether it's a bit of compromise on either side or just having a really tough conversation, finding reasons why they feel the way they do, why they feel that their way is right, and just have a really open and honest conversation about it. And I guess be willing to concede in some areas, but if you feel strongly about your position, stick with it. You've got a right to do that. And go from there. So yeah, these conversations and the feedback can really open the doors to having these good discussions, which is good, because you got to keep the lines of communication open. So another way to involve sort of existing developing leaders is include them in your strategy and your tone setting discussions about your teams. So this can be getting them to do some homework. If you wanted to invite them to take a role in explaining a concept or a portion of zone, tell them to go do some research and figure out how they want to deliver this concept and get them knowledgeable about it before they talk about it. I think there's a lot of situations where we'll just throw people into roles and say, go figure it out. But I think we need to give them the tools so that they can feel prepared to do that. Point them to video, point them to articles, tell them, you know, find the 3 key points that you want to talk about for this specific concept or this drill, and sort of guide them in what's the best way to deliver that portion of the training. So then, creating new leaders. So these are ones that maybe aren't already on a path. They haven't necessarily shown maybe direct interest in becoming a leader, but you can see those attributes of potential in them. Again, the way that they're demonstrating themselves on the field, or how you see them interact with people, and you can see that potential for leadership, and you'd like to get them more involved because you could see that maybe they would be make for a great leader. So getting them helping. And so this wouldn't necessarily be explaining zone or bigger concept type things like that, but get them helping with a demonstration. If you are going to show how to run a specific pattern or how to play a certain bit of D, and you know that this one player is really hot on D, they are so great at not letting people run past them. They hold their ground, they don't turn their shoulder, they keep their footwork. Use them in a drill and celebrate those skills that they give, that effort that they're showing on the field, so that they're part of the drill. They are seen as an example for demonstrating that skill, and then they get a bit of kudos as well for doing it well. The other one, again, get them talking. I think with women's teams, again, the more that we can talk and the more that we can get people comfortable speaking up about things, the better. So this can take a couple of forms. If during a scrimmage, someone comes up to you on the sideline during the game and asks a question, and it's a really good question about something, you can answer it there, but say, I'd really like you to bring this up when we bring it in for a huddle, and sort of get them to ask that question again to the group and then have a discussion about it as a team. It puts them in a nice position of leading a discussion. It again gives validation that it was good to ask that question, and lets them do that in sort of a public way and own it. So that's really good. And then again, connecting with their interests. So again, there's different personality types. Not everyone is going to like that opportunity to maybe speak up. But if you see that they're really good at organization, or they're just putting in 100% effort on the field, get them to find different ways and different tasks that they could do that cater to those strengths. So if it's organizing the cars and the restaurants and stuff at tournaments and taking care of all the administrative details in the background, that's great. They can be the administrative leader. If it's a fitness type, someone who's just super keen to run sprints all the time, they can be the fitness leader. So finding those special tasks that cater to their strengths will make them feel more confident and be more willing to own that up and see that as a leadership opportunity. So I don't know if we have time. It's bang on 8:30, but one thing I had wanted to do was put you into breakout groups again and have you contribute to a shared Google Doc about what you're doing within your own teams to develop existing leaders. And so whether it could be, sharing those ideas of, well, we use vice captains, or we take turns and each week we have someone lead a certain drill. I just wanted to hear and have you guys hear from all the different sort of teams and clubs about what you do. But I don't know if there's time. Do people want to stick on for another 15 minutes? Or do we want to just sort of leave that as homework, and you could go and maybe list in the shared Google Doc what you do within your club, and we can look at that on our own time. Any thoughts?
I've got to hop off soon, so for me it would be good if we did it on a shared Google Doc, but I can rewatch the recording afterwards, so I don't mind.
Okay.
I'm keen to stay for 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm keen to stay.
Okay, cool. We'll keep it short. But yeah, and Chi-Chi, we'll just, the reason that I wanted you guys to basically share your secrets and tell what you do in your teams is so that we could share this with the wider group, the Women Ultimate Facebook group, and just sort of as a resource list that they could maybe put into practice into their own clubs. So, and now, sorry, I was away from the chat, but I saw that Amelia had also sort of given a nice tip about those tough conversations and maybe delegating that to someone that they respect and can listen to. Yeah, that works as well. And again, that's another attribute of potentially a good listener. A good leader is someone who is a good listener, who's empathetic. I think in another past talk, we had talked about having someone who's maybe a bit of a, what is it we called it? It's just sort of the one who keeps the temperature, like keeps an eye on the temperature gauge of the squad, and can maybe be that, I think I called them a mole, can be that feeder into the leadership group and say, hey, everyone's, you know, either team motivation right now is really down, like we should be doing something, or I've had players tell me that they're a bit concerned about this and this. It can be that nice conduit. And again, that's another really key leadership role, especially if the players feel more comfortable going to that person for whatever reason than you. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Again, it's just because leaders can have different personalities types that different players respond to. And so it's okay if someone may not feel comfortable coming to you. So, okay, I'll put you into your breakout groups, and I'm going to give you the link to the Google Doc. And we have 9 people, so we will have enough for 3 breakout. Oh no, we have, I'll just do 2 groups because that's 9 with me, so there's really 8. So it'll be 2 groups of 4. So there's a link there to a shared Google Doc, and I'd like you to join it. And when you get broken out into groups, it'll say if you're in group 1 or if you're in group 2. So just go to your appropriate page. Don't peek at someone else's page. Just feel for you to either pop in your answers or assign someone to be the secretary, the recorder, and pop in your ideas and things there, and then have a bit of a chat about them. So I'll give you 5 minutes again, and then we'll come back and we can just take a look and discuss any last ones. And then that's kind of basically it for the talk, and we were going to do any other questions, but we'll see what time is like. Okay, so I'll put you into your groups. It'll be group 1, and then page 2 will be group 2. So have fun. I will recreate them. This is where the lottery, we get to see who gets to be in the same group again. Okay, there you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi again, Mara.
Yeah, you get to be recorded again. So I, with my recording, don't know if I can be the secretary. So, and Amelia has no audio. So, Steph,
Do I have?
this is
Can you hear
wrong.
me now?
Oh, you're in.
Yes, I can hear
Hello.
you.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Great. Lovely.
Cool. So, does anyone mind taking some notes for us? And then, yep, cool. And you've also possibly unknowingly volunteered to feed back to the big group.
Okay, that's
That was
good.
the end of my sentence, and you already volunteered.
I should, yeah, rookie mistake.
Too keen.
You got this.
So it's things that we do to develop leaders right now, isn't it? So does anyone have anything they want to kick us off with?
I think one thing that's really good is when you break up into pickup or you break up into small games is like nominating a person to be in charge of that team who maybe hasn't done it before or kind of has expressed interest in doing it in the last training.
Yeah, that's a great one. And it's so, yeah, lots of teams have 1 or 2 captains, and especially playing mini, you can end up with 2 games going. So you need more captains. That's a great way.
We have to still use like some of the examples that Jana mentioned, because with the kids that I coach, I always get someone to lead warm up all the time, and yeah, sometimes get someone to demonstrate drills and as a coach, we always give them opportunities to ask questions by phrasing it in that way. So yeah, I feel like it just reinforces what we already are trying to do. So I hope that we'll just keep it in the document, right?
Yeah, no, that's really good. That what questions do you have instead of are there any questions?
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
I'll probably forget, but I really will be trying to do that next season. Because I think that's a really important, like that language thing. I'm really bad at using the right language to kind of, yeah, those subtle things. I think it's there's a lot of things like that that are you miss when you don't think about them. So that one was really cool.
I guess also as an add-on, just as well as reinforcing that it was a really good question, you could say next time if you have that kind of question, you know, just pitch that in when you have the chance to, and that kind of lets them know that next time they can do that again.
Yeah, it's not a one-time thing. We always want questions.
Yeah.
That's good.
What else?
My Y key doesn't work on my keyboard, and you'd be surprised how many times you've just typed Y.
Yeah, you always know.
Same with the letter P.
Yeah, I think I thought, well, Tara, I thought you might say that you've been voluntold to do things. I feel like
a bit of both.
things. That's definitely one thing. There's a conscious. I think there is a conscious decision around telling, like, or asking someone to run the warm up. It's not just a random, you know, it is. I hadn't thought of it strongly that way, but yeah, it was always someone that I've seen some sort of leadership quality in, and I'm like, yeah, that person will be capable of running a warm up, and yeah, I guess I'll be more conscious about maybe. Hopefully, I can encourage them to do something more than just running warm ups if that's something that they're interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. In hindsight, I probably should have cooked voluntold, but also, like, it's a mixture of a lot of different things, because sometimes it is of my own volition, but sometimes, I don't know, when you feel like other people are more, like, qualified, or, like, I don't know, more, and I don't know.
Experienced.
Yeah, like, experienced for dealing with it. It's like, oh, I don't want to put my name forward because, like, they do a better job, so I just won't. So getting told to do it is actually quite good sometimes.
It'd be quite good. Yeah, I switched between I'm doing it because no one else is doing it, and I'm doing it because I want to. Because initially I did it because no one else was doing it. You know, it's a few years ago now since I was doing it because no one else wanted to. But now I do it because I want to. So you kind of can make that transition. So it's not always a bad thing that you sort of start doing it just because you have to.
Yeah. Definitely with the newer, like the new leadership kind of thing, just planting that seed in person and telling them that you have this specific quality that, like, I can help you with, or you can possibly develop if you want to, and giving them that opportunity or that invitation. And I think also mentorship from someone else who's already a leader really helps, because people look up to existing leaders in Frisbee, and I think being approached by someone in that way does really change someone and how they perceive their potential. So yeah, I think really having a voluntelling? I don't even know if that word.
Yeah, voluntelling. I don't think it's a word, but we're using it.
That can be, yeah, quite positive and quite empowering from someone.
Yeah.
I also think kind of like recognizing when someone, like, coming up to someone and saying, you're really good at this thing, would you mind if I got you to explain it to, like, if we split up into two groups, I'll explain it to one group, can you explain it to the other group? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think it's I don't think that's something that we use very much in Nexus, which is probably something we could definitely improve on. Like Jana said, we have quite a large leadership group, so we have a wide variety of people that will run sessions. I think we had a group of 5 this year, that was formally agreed around Christmas, and pre-Christmas we had another 3 or 4. So we probably had about 8 different people that ran parts of trainings and drills throughout the season. But even with that, we have such a large club that there are people I'm sure we should have been tapping on the shoulder and saying, you've got really good footwork. Can you be an example of good footwork for us to like, and talk about how you got to that point, or, you know, you're really good at this thing. And that's definitely, I think, is when it validates you, but it sort of takes away that thing of, oh no, there's people that can do it better than me, because someone's actually reaching out to you but for no other reason. Like, I'm not going to lie to you and be like, no, you're really good at this, teach us how to do that. If there's really someone else who can do it. So that's a really good way of doing it.
Cool.
Written down, Tara, you good? You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to present. Let's go.
Thanks, Tara.
Trying to make it their own idea is the best, but also hard.
Yeah.
I like
All
Beck. I
right.
like taking your sips of wine in between.
So
Right.
good.
I had to have a drink before I started, just so I wouldn't be so nervous. So, so yes, welcome back, everyone. So I know that was quick, but even just the bits that I saw getting put into that document were just really great. And what I'd like to do is even just, I'll combine them into one page and share that to the Women in Ultimate group and encourage anyone and everyone to just put in ideas, because I think that it could just be a nice, good starting point. And it's just quick little things that people can use to activate building leaders in their teams. Because again, just to recap, I think it's good for club sustainability. It's good for growth of yourself and your teammates. It definitely builds empathy and understanding of what goes into leadership. I think a lot of people just don't realize, and for one, maybe they think it's too hard, and until they really hard that necessarily keeps you away from doing it, or they think it's easy and the decision, this is obvious to me, but when they're put in that position and they have to make a really tough decision based on whatever information is had at the time, they can understand how it can be hard. So I think it's good that way for just people to get a better sense of everything and to develop themselves, which is good on the field, and it's also just good in life. I think I've found that I've become more confident in work, in other social situations. Again, just drawing on experiences and Frisbee teams as a leader or as a teammate. So Frisbee always has good influences on life. So yeah, that's just another way that it does that. So yeah, this was supposed to be like 15 minutes left for questions, but time totally flew by. But if people do have any other sort of last questions or things that they'd like to discuss for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm open to it. Cool. But yeah, no, I think it's good. And I think that it's definitely a place that we can just continue to learn from. And the more that we make leadership seem less scary, I think that the more people will hopefully get into it and see that there's value in leading in all sorts of different ways. You don't have to be the coach to be the leader. So yeah. With that catchphrase, I will wrap it up there. And thank you again, the Hearty Core, for attending time and time again. Amelia, you've got about